Once upon a time in 1989, the Vancouver Canucks made a draft pick that shocked the hockey world as they selected, out of the Soviet Union and the Red Army team, an inevitable legend in Pavel Bure. Let's briefly dive into Pavel Bure, his time as a Canuck and as a Florida Panther, as well as dive into this hockey figurine as made by McFarlane Toys in their very first NHLPA series of figures. Welcome back to Ice Hockey POV. We are out here at the local hockey box taking a look at some more ice hockey memorabilia. In this video, we're diving into this Bure figure. As we had mentioned, it's one of the earliest McFarlane Sports Picks figures, and it was back in the day that McFarlane was technically making toys for the NHLPA rather than the NHL itself, which is why if you take a look at some of these older series of figures, there isn't any Florida Panthers branding on the Pavel Bure. There isn't any Boston Bruins branding on, I believe there was a Ray Bourque in there. Instead, you had the regular jerseys that looked just like the NHL team's jerseys that these players played for, but then you had NHLPA branding on it instead. This Pavel Bure figure cost me, I think, $2 at the thrift store many moons ago. It has a pretty good likeness. If you zoom into it there, it looks pretty much like the Russian Rocket during his days with the Florida Panthers. The helmet has his own name rather than a Reebok or a CCM. It says Bure on the top there and on there too. Of course, McFarlane Toys was trying to avoid as many rights and licensing issues as possible, which is why even the badge on the shoulder says Bure with a big B rather than the Florida Panthers' signature cat logos too. But ultimately, these figures had the right color scheme. You could definitely see the Florida Panthers' inspiration there. If we take a look at it, there's a pretty nice dark blue up on the shoulders, white stripes on the top and bottom of the jersey, and then a smudged up Bure with a 10 on the back. Taking a look at the gloves, you can see these are Bauer gloves, so I guess they officially licensed these. Although the stick, this hockey stick, is not the original stick that the figure came with. It's actually an extra Bauer stick that I had lying around. It was cut in half, so I ended up putting it onto Bure in this sort of a pose. Have him holding the broken part of the stick, probably as he skates to the bench or something. I think in my head, this idea of a figurine makes sense. Then you go down into the pants. It's that same dark blue color. The socks have really nice detailing and texturing, as do the back and underside of the pants. You could really get that detail in there that McFarlane liked to put on a lot of their earlier figures. You've got red, white, blue, yellow, blue, and then some Bauer skates on the bottom as well. The peg allows him to lean forward a little bit, so that's the pose that you would have. And then the inscription on the bottom here. Let's take a look at what that says. NHLPA 2000 McFarlane Toys. So a pretty nice piece of hockey memorabilia. The Russian Rocket, a guy that, as we had said once upon a time, was an unexpected draft choice by the Vancouver Canucks in the 1989 NHL draft. There were questions as to whether or not he'd be able to be drafted. But as the Vancouver Canucks were able to find some extra exhibition and international games, it turned out Pavel Bure actually did meet the qualifications to be drafted in that season, which allowed the Canucks to grab a guy that inevitably became the best goal scorer in franchise history. Multiple 60-goal seasons with the Canucks, and then he had a career in Florida which saw him win the Rocket Richard multiple times too. Pavel Bure had his knees held up, would have been heralded as pretty much the best goal scorer in NHL history, with his speed, with his shot. He was called the Russian Rocket for a reason, as these legs right here were able to push him through and allow him to just take over the game. with speed that we would never see until essentially Connor McDavid and Nathan MacKinnon took over 30 years later. But the Russian Rocket is one of the most refined goal scorers of all time in the NHL. Had he just been healthy the entire way, he probably would have had a lot more goals. But at the end of the day, we can still acknowledge the body of work that he was able to provide and the overall skill set that Pavel Bure graced the NHL, the Vancouver Canucks, and the Florida Panthers with in his long career. This has been Ice Hockey POV. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. How do you feel about this figure? Any other pieces of hockey memorabilia you want us to dive into? And what are your thoughts on Pavel Bure, a hockey legend, a Hall of Famer, and one of the 100 best players of all time? This has been Ice Hockey POV, and I'll catch you in the next one.